Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Kesh Foundation Spaceship Institute Public Teaching in English for Monday, December 4th, 2017. And today we have part 11 of our Understanding Plasma Science series. And as usual, we have Jim and Lisa McDonald with us and Shander Kakashi. I'm your host, Flint Mulhausen. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Jim.
Hello, Flint. Hi, everybody. And welcome, Sandor and Rick. Yeah, we're nearly done. 12 seemed quite short, but it does seem quite long at the same time. So,
Yeah, only one more week left after this. So.
Yeah. All right. Let me just share. Is it coming through, Flint?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Just let me know if the delay is very pronounced today. And then we can always change the slides to you. You should have received by now, I think.
Thank you.
All right, so today we'll be doing the last of the plasma science, the bits of the nano, finalizing the nano, and then the GANs. The last of the GANs will be the copper oxide that we'll be going through. And the technology and everything that we've been talking about for the last 10 weeks has all been brought to you by the Kesh Foundation. Mr. Kesh is the one that's been teaching many people around the world for years. And so we're hoping that with these workshops, it's given people a little bit of an understanding so that they can start watching a lot of the other videos by themselves, knowing that they've had a bit of the basic understanding. Right, so today we'll just do on the final part of the science. And today I'm going to focus on the plasma spiral and just to go into a bit more details on that one as to its some of its meanings. Okay, and what we can understand from the spiral is if one views it as a wound-up spring, and we've all played with springs before, and when you wind them up, the strongest point in that spring is in the center. And this is what we call the principal fields that are in the center. So, and as we move to the outside, so we know with that spring they become weaker. So this spiral represents, each point on the spiral represents a certain magnetical and gravitational field strength. So obviously the real center point of your spiral is going to be the strongest, and that's your principal field. Now when we split that spring up apart, we're just showing you in the three parts, so that principal matter, which we call transition matter, and the matter. So it's the same spiral, it's just broken out so that you can actually see the tiny center point there. Now, as we move out from the center point, the principal magnetic fields unwind and spread outwards from the center, just like a spring would. And as these principal fields unwind, it's this releasing, opening, and loosening of these fields, which leads to the creation of what we call transition magnetic fields. And then as these move even further away from the center, they become the matter magnetic fields and the matter in the envelope of the magnetosphere of a plasma. So that's at the very outer edges. It's the weaker of the fields. So when we look at the spiral on the other way around, going from the outside going inwards, we then start on the outside with the very weak fields. And as we go in towards the center, we get stronger and stronger fields. Now, to apply this in our everyday life to get a bit of an understanding of what this means is we can look at an egg, and we just look at this as an illustration, where the egg yolk in the middle is your principal field. You have your transition field, which is the white part of your egg, and then the actual shell itself is your matter field. So it's a very nice way of trying to visualize what these different strengths are within the plasma. So when we have a look at the principal field in the center, we can apply it to this whole concept we can start applying to everything that we know. So it can be the center of our universe, it can be the center of our galaxy, our solar system, or even our proton or electron. So if we have a look at an example of our solar system, so the sun is the source of the magnetic fields which radiate outwards into our solar system. And so our sun, we could say, is our principal field within the solar system. And these are the plasmatic magnetic fields and are the nourishment to all entities within the internal plasma of our solar system. And we can call entities, we can call them other planets, the man or the plants on this planet. So it's the fields which nourish all the entities within our solar system. And we can then view our solar system as one single plasma. So if the sun is our principal field, then as these principal fields unwind and expand and spread out within the plasma of our solar system, we get the creation of the transition and then the matter strength fields. And so the transition fields is sort of we call it sort of the empty space because we just don't see it. So it's the transition fields are in between all the planets. It's in that space between the planets. And then the matter fields are the actual planets and what we see with our amino acid field strength of our eyes. So just always bear in mind is what we see out there is only because we are seen in a very narrow range, that we do not see anything else beyond what our eyes can see. But it's just filled with the fields. So that was the plasma of the solar system, and we can now apply it to the galaxy. So any entity can be created anywhere in the galaxy as long as the appropriate magnetic field strength of that entity is reached through reduction or interaction of magnetic fields of the galaxy itself or its universe's magnetic fields. So what we're trying to explain here is that at different points on the spiral, we have different magnetic gravitational field strengths. And so within the galaxy, we can have a look at a certain point. We can, that strength leads to the creation of a star. At another point, we have the creation of a planet within a solar system. So it's all within the plasma of the galaxy. It just varies depending on the point at which we get manifestation with the accumulation of the fields. So we come back to the same again, where it does not matter whether it's the universe or the Earth or a neutron, proton or electron or man. We all have within us the principal fields, transition fields, and the matter fields. Now, to understand it a bit further as to how we fit into all of it is if we take a look at the universe, and at that particular point, we have a creation of a galaxy. Now, that galaxy is also a plasma and also has a spiral. So we can now take that galaxy, and when we then go at a different strength within that galaxy, we get the creation of a solar system at a certain point in that galaxy, a certain field strength. And within that solar system, field strength, it leads to the creation of what we have as Earth. So as you can see, the one is just a larger reflection of the other or smaller reflection of the other. So in this slide, you can see that we have the universe, and at a certain point in the spiral of the universe, certain field strength, we have the creation of a galaxy. And then at a certain point within that galaxy, we have the creation of the solar system. So we're looking at sort of, and I think we have done it before, but this is just another way of explaining it, that we have sort of plasma within a plasma. And it's just the strength that varies at what point on that spiral. And so now when we come back to the slide, it starts making a lot more sense in that the existence and interaction of dynamic and different field strengths, speeds, and densities of magnetic fields leads to what we see as our planets or galaxies, plants, animals, molecules, or atoms, because it's the same principle. It's only the scale or the strength that differs. And then, as we've shown before, but it's coming back just to refresh in terms of when we look at it ourselves as the man. So we know, and we've been taught, that the soul is our center, our sort of central field strength, primal field strength. So we are a plasma, and so we have our strong primal field in the center, which is our soul. The outer edges of the field, so as these fields unwind, it shows itself as the physical entity, which is the body, and the fields in between, the transition fields, these are our emotion. So even within our body, we have the same structure, the same principle. All right. Any questions on that one?
Yes, I do see some hands coming up here. Bring them in here. There's a João Batista. He had his hand up there. Hello, João.
No questions, please. Thank you.
Oh, okay. There's Nicholas Morrow. Hello, Nicholas.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So when we use the term plasma, plasma in a sense then is an entity, a unit within itself. So when we speak of plasma, we're speaking of a unity, which is the core of the transition and a physical manifestation. Is that correct?
Yes, because
of plasma.
Sorry.
There is some feedback.
there.
Nicholas. So I'll just mute you when you're done there, Nicholas.
Okay. Look, when we call.
Well, I'm done. I'm done. The question just being the unity, like a human being has a unity, or an atom has a unity in and of itself, even though it's a circle within a circle within a circle in a certain way, or a plasma within a plasma. Is that correct?
Yes.
So we speak of a plasma, then what is that plasma? Is it definable? Is it seeable? Or do we just see the fields and the physical? Can we even see the fields? We can see the physical manifestation of it. But if it's the core, it's the soul of the plasma. If every plasma has a core, which within that core is kind of a soul or a core, but we can see the sun. But can we see a plasma? Or can we only detect the effects that organization has because it has a physical manifestation on the outer edge?
We only can see that which has a field strength which matches the field strength of the amino acids of our eyes.
Could you try to explain that?
So many questions. Let's go one by one, and somebody please reduce the volume of your speakers because I got sometimes a feedback. So, okay, so let's go back to definitions. We consider that the plasma in its collective existence is a combination of different initial fundamental matter magnetic fields, which are created through the interaction of at least two or more of the same strength plasmatic magnetic fields of the initial fundamental particles. So that's we consider a plasma.
You make your GANs, Nicholas, that's a plasma. It's a collection of fields.
Sorry, it's Rui speaking. May I ask if you can call the plasma as we see as the life itself, expression of life itself?
Not really. Not really. Life is a little more. Question is, what do you mean by life?
What is more than life?
No. Life is more than plasma.
So what is life?
Life means that you have some interactions with others. Is it so?
Yeah, and that is the plasma. It creates the life. No?
Is the city the brick? Is the house the brick? But with a brick you can build houses, you can build cities.
Yeah, you mean life, you have to have conscience, but we know that plasma probably has his own path to create life and made the conscience to become real in our eyes.
Consciousness is the subject of other lectures, not today's one.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
So life is the organizing principle, like a function, and it calls forth the plasmas to organize it so that it has a substance within which to exist.
I think the question one has to ask and to get a definition of first in terms of what do we term as life? Are we only looking at it from our physical body point of view? Or are we looking, do we not classify anything else that we don't see as not life? I mean, so that the question is quite a very broad question.
I don't mean to expand into that. It's just that question has come to me. Well, what is a plasma? What is a, how do you know it's there? And to me, it's almost a mystery. And so what you brought up here in this presentation is really a big help, and I'm sure there are other questions. It just was, wanting to identify that. Question being, well, is what we call ether in the universe, or what we call ether, is that a plasma? Is that a transition field within a plasma?
So we were talking about plasma. We were not talking about life, time being. We were not talking about ether.
Well, very good. If you want to go there, that's fine. Thank you.
Ether. Yeah,
it's just words, and sometimes we can get hooked on words, because throughout history, the one thing will be called different things. You'll have 10 words that explain the same thing. Ether explains the world around us that we don't see. Now we know that it's filled with magnetic fields and plasmatic fields. So, we now have to look at that word ether, and as to what it really is now.
So ether from sorry, Nicholas. Some people understand, a chemist understands by ether a highly volatile, flammable liquid used as a solvent, or formerly it was an anesthetic, or any of a class of organic compounds characterized by an oxygen atom attached to the two carbons. Or some other people understand heavens by ether. Others understand the rarefied element formerly believed to fill the upper regions of space. So other meaning of the same word ether, it's a medium in the wave theory of light, permeates all the space and transmits transverse waves. Others understand it as airwaves. So you see, there is a problem with words. If I may open my camera, if the host would allow me.
Sure, go ahead now.
Right. There is an issue with words and concepts, because we say a word. For instance, we say the word stick. And so what's this? What do you see here? It's a stick, yes. And what's this one? It's another kind of stick. But this also is a stick, yes? And this one is also a stick, but a different size. And this little one can also be a stick. You can add, to say, a matchstick, or a stick with a specific purpose, like chopsticks or whatever, but it's a concept. A word covers a concept, not just one specific manifestation of many of the objects which we call with the same word. Same with ether. It has many meanings. If you can go to the root of the word, from where it came, maybe you can get a larger view about it. But we are not going to philosophize so much here, because we have a basic purpose to present the understanding of the basics of Meron Tavakolikesh's teachings about plasma. So can we stay on that subject, please? I know every answer which you get will inspire to more questions and more questions, because we all have accumulated throughout our lives so many question marks since we were kids, when we asked why and how. And we are still asking why and how now. But let's go step by step.
Thank you, Sandor. It's just the question came to me because it was being viewed as ether being a finer state of matter, where you go.
No, ether and matter are completely different things.
I just hear what you're saying. It's just the question came to me. It was a finer state of matter in a certain way. We're seeing plasma as being the finer state of matter, that matter only being an expression of the plasma. And that's good enough for me, and thank you. We don't need to take it further as far as I'm concerned.
You are
Thank you.
welcome. So you have seen Mr. Cash's book number 1, where it defines 3 kinds of matters, yes, which have different characteristics, and which definitions later were changed in book number 2. So in the first, they used it was used the terminology of the classical physics, like antimatter or dark matter and matter itself. And later it was introduced a new terminology which reflects better what these types of matter are. So it's not anymore antimatter, because it's nothing anti, nothing against something else, it's nothing to oppose. It's just a principal matter from which all are emanating out. And that so-called dark matter was renamed as a transition matter. And transition matter, in all terminology, dark matter has an important characteristic. It has balanced gravitational and magnetic plasmatic magnetic fields in respect to the environment plasmatic magnetic fields. So that's why it doesn't radiate light. So we are, Mr. Cash gives us the teaching, and we are trying to help you to get better in little basics. So let's go step by step, and from simple to more complex. And of course, later everyone may have lots of inspirations, lots of enlightenment. So the purpose is not to give you a formula which to memorize and apply. The purpose of our teachings is to inspire you, to let you find the truth as you perceive it. Okay.
I
So in
think,
life,
just before we go on, Flint, I think Nicholas has raised an interesting question, not so much the question, but what I found is a lot of, we all come from different walks of life. We all come from different backgrounds, and we've all learned different things. And so the way I find it easy for me is to understand and learn the plasma science itself and understand it fully, and then try and see whether what you've learned in the past in whatever topic fits in with this understanding. Because a lot of the times we're trying to make the plasma fit into what we've learned. And then that's when we create a lot of confusion within ourselves. So that's the way I find it works for me. So maybe that will help with a few other people. All right, Flint, what other question?
In Lifestream, I was just going to mention there that Tammy asked, so is plasma the brick to build everything?
No, because the plasma itself is made of the magnetic fields, and those are your building blocks.
So if the magnetic fields are the sand and the clay, then the plasma is the bricks. Can we say that?
Yeah. Because the fields come together at a certain point on that spiral, and then they create, whether it's a planet or whether it's a galaxy or a solar system. It's accumulation of fields at that point, that strength.
I'm sure about later people will ask where from these elementary magnetic fields come. And that will be the subject of later teachings.
That will be next year's teachings.
Yeah.
Not next week.
No, not next week. Any other question there?
Yeah, I'd like just to saying, Mr. Cash say everything is plasma, so you can understand it that way as well. Different strengths of plasma.
Yeah, thanks, Rui. Exactly right.
Also, there's something I'd like to add, which is even though the normal scientists now agree that the universe is composed of approximately 99.999% plasma, what they call plasma, which is a gaseous ionized state of matter, which is different than ordinary matter. And that means, like our sun, for example, is a good example of it's plasma, it's pure plasma. So it's easy to look at that in terms of plasma, but most of the universe is composed of stuff like suns, not so much planets like we see with gravity and an atmosphere. Like we are in an exceptional place right now, being subject to gravity and subject to an atmosphere and so on. It would be more difficult for us to exist in space because of its more extreme energy levels, where we transformed all that energy through our atmosphere and through the gravity of the earth and so on, so we can exist here. But it's most of the universe is composed of plasma, even according to the normal scientists. And we forget about that because we're protected so much in our nice, easy, beautiful planet we have here that is essentially our spaceship in space, till we develop our own to go to space without a spaceship, perhaps, or with one. Either way, one thing for sure, when we're in space, we'll be dealing with plasma more so than the solid stuff, which is the
Very
exception.
good point. It's very good point, Rick. Can we go back to the slide with the egg, please?
I'll do that.
So it matches very well what Rick just told. Yes, this one. So let's use this as something which symbolizes what Rick was telling about. Modern scientists talk about 99% of the universe is made of plasma and only 1% of matter. So we talk differently about the matter as we understood it as the elements, which can be in gaseous, liquid form or solid form, depending on external conditions like temperature and atmospheric pressure. And we talk about different matters like antimatter, dark matter, or with new terminology, principal matter and transitional matter. So what you see here, you see the percentage of the so-called matter field, which is the shell, which is solid. And the rest inside, it's the 99%, which is in a different state of matter. So it's universe, just you have eggs within the eggs within the eggs. So you have only the outer boundary, which manifests that matter as we know the matter. That which we can touch, smell, or taste. It's very similar with the structure of the universe. And it's very same with any plasma itself. Understand? Any atom is a plasma or a collection of plasmas. Any planet is made of plasma. Any solar system is made of plasma. Any galaxy is made of plasma. And the entire universe is made of plasma.
Strangely enough, yesterday I was looking at pictures of Jupiter, and of the eye of Jupiter, there's a storm that's an ongoing storm for probably millions of years, and it has a particular shape like an eye. And it's actually related to possibly the Eye of Horus in Egyptian times and so on and so forth. And it's very much like the eye we see here in this chicken to be, this embryo. It has an eye, and it looks also very much like the sun. And I was just reading how Jupiter actually is a gaseous giant. It's composed of 99% hydrogen and helium, not unlike our own sun. And it's interesting, the sun also has solar spots that look like these eyes, and they go into this blackness that we see beyond the surface of the sun. But it's very interesting. It's almost exactly the same shape for the eye on Jupiter. So it's very much connected. If we look at this as the sun in the yolk of the egg, then the Earth and the other solid planets are part of that matter field. The asteroids and whatnot is part of the matter field that surrounds that principal field. And we have the transition in between the rays that come from the sun, which we can't see until they actually manifest through the atmosphere of the Earth and into into the ranges that we can see, as Shandor mentioned, with the amino acid range of our eyeballs, what they're able to pick up. But there's many more fields through that transition field besides just the visual range that we pick up with our eyes. Anyway, I didn't mean to get too far astray there, but thanks for bringing that up, Shandor. That's a good illustration.
Thanks for talking about the right. Nicholas, please either use headphones or reduce the volume of your speakers because your microphone is picking up the sound which comes up from your speakers. It always makes feedback when your microphone is open.
Is that better?
Any other?
Sandor, you speak of the transition field as being the magnetic and gravitational being in perfect balance, and so that's why we can't detect it.
Imbalance with what?
With itself.
It's in balance with the plasmatic magnetic fields of the environment. So the feedback was still there. So the dark matter or the transitional matter has balanced gravitational and magnetic plasmatic magnetic fields in respect to the environment plasmatic magnetic fields.
That's why scientists aren't able to detect or find any actual proof that dark matter exists.
There is actual proof of it because it has gravity and the gravity is sensed in some ways. But it's called the dark matter, this transitional matter, because it does not emit light.
Do we have any other questions, Flint?
Yes, we have Dimitri's been waiting here. Go ahead, Dimitri.
Thank you very much. Could we just go to the slide that had the 3 spirals on it, the 3 plasmas on there, please?
If my computer will play ball with me. Okay.
That one. Okay. So we haven't, or to my knowledge, we haven't found it yet. But does the universe have a central sun? We know that our galaxy does have a central sun, and the fields from our galactic central sun are what created our solar sun. And it is the fields from our solar sun that has created the planets in our solar system. Now, it could, the fields from the galactic sun had to have had a role to play in the creation of the planets in our solar system. Am I correct in that thinking?
Yes, absolutely.
Right. So with that in mind, there has to be a solar system in this galaxy that has a planet very, very similar to Earth. What are your thoughts on that?
Why would you say that?
Because the galactic sun has had an interaction with the solar sun, and between the pair of them, and probably the rest of the suns in the galaxy, they're all emitting fields, and those fields never stop. They're always moving. So when the planets were created, it's everything in our galaxy had a role to play in the creation of the planets within our solar system. We know that everything is a reflection of itself, that a plasma creates interacts with another plasma and creates another plasma, and it's all the same thing. So with that in mind, that everything is just a reflection, and it's just literally different field strengths that create the different, what we perceive as matter. There has to be a planet that is similar to ours, that has plants growing on it within our galaxy. Surely we can't, the blue planet Mother Earth cannot, I love her, believe me, but I don't think she's that unique in a way that there are no other planets in our galaxy that don't have plants on them. It's the same fields that have been used, right?
Yeah, I can't answer you directly, Dimitri, on whether, I can't give you a yes or no answer on that one. But it's a case of, we look at our Earth in relation to our sun in our solar system, and it's Earth's position to the sun which allows us to have the life we have on this planet. If our Earth position had to change and move closer or further away, we had different life, because of our positioning. So, as I can't answer your question. It just makes us ponder that yes, there could be or there couldn't be, or slightly different because of the different positioning, different conditions. So
slightly similar ones, maybe, of course, but everything is a little bit of something unique. But similarities may exist, of course. And of course, every planet, every sun, every solar system has life. There's no place in the universe where there should be no life.
Yeah, because Mr. Cash said that when the dinosaurs were walking around and the plants were much bigger, that was simply because we were a different distance from our sun. So, if there is, there is a solar system, there's got to be a solar system within our galaxy that its position from its solar sun is relative to the position of our solar sun to the galactic sun. And there's got to be, I'm sure of it. Thank you for taking up your time.
Yeah, so this thing which you say, it was neither denied, neither confirmed. Possibilities exist.
Dimitri, you'll have to go find out and then let us know, please.
Yeah, that will be my pleasure, Jim.
Okay. Another important point to remember here when you look at this slide is if that's our solar system and then we have Earth and then we've got ourselves on Earth. Okay, so in this way you can see that even ourselves as a human being, we have the field of the universe within us. We have the fields of the galaxy within us, and we have the fields of the solar system within us. So many a times when Mr. Kesh was saying that we have that strength of the universe, when you see this picture, now you can understand why. Any other questions, Flint?
Okay. Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. Yeah, we do have Peter Heitzberg. He had his hand up. You there, Peter?
It isn't Peter, it's Adrian.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for the illustrations and the conversation and observations. I'm not a scientist, but I listen and I ponder and observe, and when I see the circles made, the solar, galactic, and universal there, it's a replication to me, and it I then following it back to the human that we are. I think of the fish trying to describe the water with Nicholas's question. The language of something that one can describe in units and measures and elements as a scientist. And then one searches and stretches for the language to describe it in the emotion and the nature of what isn't a language yet, with what non-scientists from soul, I would offer to say, is stretching to find the language of, out of what Mr. Kesh describes so beautifully in pictures and information and soul. So I think of the fish swimming in the water, and how would I ask the fish to describe the water and all the elements within the water and all the nature of environment within the fish and the water when the waters change for different reasons, that then changes the matterous substance of the fish and the magnetic nature of the water. I myself am all of that, I feel. And the description for me is a large one that says to me, the magnetic and the gravitational are always there in principle, in all things, and their relationship, their positioning is what I am attentive to in my everyday observations of everything now. So I see that it changes everything, just like when I watched the magnets with on the board, and how Mr. Kesh positioned those, and then how Rick earlier had positioned those, and how it moves. So it relates really to Nicholas's question for me, that that basic question that came, what is plasma? Can we define it? Or can we just observe its movement around us and in us, if we can, if we are attentive? So I just find this magnetic and gravitational has everything in it. And as I'm attentive to the plants and the everything, the nature of my emotions in the day, the nature of, mostly in the garden and the growing things, but also between people. It's replication and metamorphosis out of itself, and it always has a core, and that core is in me and you and in all things. And so we struggle because we come from different aspects of our matterous substance to try to understand something that only describes itself in the magnificence of positioning. And I'm in love with this. I'm absolutely in love with this. And I think that's all I have to say, and I appreciate all that is coming and appreciate the opportunity to speak too. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian, for those beautiful words. Any other questions?
I like to listen, sweetie pie.
Was there somebody there?
I heard a voice, but I'm not sure where it came from. It was out of the ethers, I think.
Yeah, I think it was an open mic after Adrian spoke there.
All right.
I don't see any other questions here, so.
All right, let me continue. So, we get to the next question, and we can say to you, right, go to YouTube channel, and I think there's probably more than 1,000 videos by now, Flint. I think so the question is, where do you...
On the YouTube channel, the Keshe Foundation YouTube channel, I think we're approaching 2,000 total videos shortly.
It's even worse. Okay.
I don't know whether to have a celebration or be scared. It's amazing.
So,
yeah,
it is. So it becomes quite hard for people to, we've tried to explain a bit of the basics so that when you start watching these videos, you can understand what is being spoken. As I said before, when I started watching, I think I watched for 2 or 3 months and didn't understand what was happening, and eventually you start. So what we do, so to make it easier, is if you go to the YouTube, and it's go to the playlist, and you go to the Kids Knowledge Seeker workshops. It's one of the very first set of playlists out there. There are 22 videos. They are about an hour long, but packed full of basic information. Now, I think a lot of people skip these because they see Kids Knowledge Seeker workshops. But bear in mind, when it comes to the science, we're all kids. So we can learn a great deal from these workshops. So I recommend starting at 1 and then work your way to number 22 and then go back to number 1, because what you're finding is when you start rewatching a lot of these workshops, because you've gained knowledge over the time, when you come back, it's like watching a workshop for the very first time, because you're now picking up more and more information from that same workshop. So your understanding is growing all the time. And what you didn't understand the very first time, you start beginning to understand the second and even the third time when you watch that same workshop. So if you do nothing else but go from 1 to 22 and back again for a couple of times, it's well worth your time going through these workshops. There's a huge amounts of information in there.
I just like to second that as well, because I was there for those workshops, and along with Kevin Devaney and myself and Mr. Kesh, we kind of we organized those workshops, and they are so powerful. I found that the kids workshops, I often learn more than I did in the knowledge seekers workshops, because it was simplified, direct, and very intuitive at the same time. So highly recommended.
Yes, thanks to you and Rick and Kayvon for doing those. And I think they've sort of been lost with amongst so much other stuff, but it's time they found their place again in helping people to understand a little bit more. They are a bit easier. The next set is for those that are inclined on the health side, whether you are medical doctors or not, or whether you're nurses, or whether you just have that interest and like to learn more on the health side. There's 48 workshops there, very detailed workshops on the health, going into each and every organ of the body, understanding it from the current medical point of view. And then Mr. Kesh comes in and starts explaining it from the plasma point of view. So very useful workshops there in understanding. And what you learn from the health side, you learn to apply in agriculture and everywhere else. So it's also well worth spending some Christmas holiday time and watching these workshops. Okay, so I'm just going to do on the nano layering, we're just doing a little bit of a summary of what we've been through. We did in part 3 the hot caustic method, and then in part 7 the steam method, and in part 9 the fire method. So what we'd like to recommend is that the hot caustic method is the best practice to use and highly recommended. It does take a long time, but to get the best results, that's the practice that we recommend, and it can be used for all applications. When you're looking at the steam method, it's an optional method when you want to add additional nano layers. When you begin to understand how we can add specific layers with different fields, then that's the method. And it's not to be used as your very first nano laying process. And then the fire method, whether you're using the flame or whether you even do it on an open flame, that's a method that you can use when time is critical, when in emergency situations, or when you just don't have access to caustic. So that method can be used, and again, it can be used for maggrav coils, capacitors, and even to make your GaNs. So these are the 3 sort of methods, but the main one that we do recommend is the hot caustic method. But as I said, it's your choice which one you do. Just bear in mind the outcome of the results that you're wanting to get. It all has an impact. And I think if we open for questions from the nano and that, I think we might be here for 2 hours. So if we want to open up for a couple of questions for Sando, those people that would like to ask, then I think we can do that. If we just keep it to a couple of questions, then that'll be fine. No questions, Flint? That must be a first.
No, they're coming in here.
Okay.
It takes a while just to promote them here. Yeah, Boniface is here.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Boniface.
Thank you, Flint. Hello, Jim.
Yes, fine.
You mentioned the hot caustic method is recommended for all applications. And I just want to I guess, remind us that Dr. Rodrigo recommended that for food GANs that we use the CO2 for that and not the hot caustic method. I don't know if you want to comment about that or not.
Now, with CO2?
Yeah. Obviously, we originally, a lot of people started making the food gases by placing it into caustic and then leaving it for a few days, and then you start the washing process. But you just never know whether you are getting all of that caustic material out. And so from a health perspective, it's not the best method. Here we're just looking at nano layering of copper. So it's not using the caustic for food or anything. So I think if you watch, I think last week's episode with Dr. Rodrigo, he goes into a lot of detail with the food gases. So yeah, we're just talking of nano layering of the copper, nothing else.
So creation of gases for different purposes, it's a different subject. Nano layering of the metal pieces, it's another one. So with nano-layered metal parts, we can create gases, we can do different things. And the creation of gases, it's again a different subject. By the way, there are even more methods of creating the nano-layers. Just now we are restricted to the basics, which you can easily make. We shall never forget that Mr. Cash often said that the best method which creates the best nano-layers, it's the method of nano-coating by plasma, which we have seen in the Coke bottle experiment, which was the first publicly presented experiment by Mr. Cash many, many years ago. Probably you remember that. Also, those who have maglev units, maglev power units, those observed that the connected wires all became nano-coated after a while. So that's a nano-coating by plasma, which you can do it also by creating a cold plasma reactor from a Coke bottle also. So I had to add that little thing here.
I have a question about renewing a nano-coated surface. Say that we have nano-coated some copper plates.
There are two cases. If you did the nano-coating originally by hot caustic method, you can do the renewing by the caustic steam method. If you made your original nano-coating by fire, in that case, it's very simple. You renew it by fire again.
Very good. And how about plates that have already been used in a GANS bath? How does one renew that nano-coating?
So if you produced the nano-layers by hot caustic method, in that case, you take them out, you wash them out, you rinse them, and you put them in caustic steam. And you use the caustic steam method. Or if you made quickly fire method for creating nano-coating on some pieces of copper, like Tom Salas is doing right now in Dominica after the hurricanes, after the island was devastated by hurricanes and the technical conditions are limited. You can see on his Facebook page how he went to demolished houses demolished by the storm, and how he was picking up different metal pieces, copper wires, etc., and how he is nano-coating them by fire, even without a gas torch, just a normal wood fire. Just you don't use the fire, but you use the live coals, and you can make a nano-coating in that way, like Tom Salas does. and you can use that for producing GANs. If you use that kind of coating, maybe the coating will not last so much like nano coating made with hot caustic, but no problem. If after 3-4 days you see your nano coating was thinned, in that case you take it out, you rinse it, and you put it again on the fire process, and you renew the nano coating and you put it back to work. Just you don't use the fire to renew caustic nano-coated surface. Is the answer clear? Are you satisfied with the answer?
Thank you, Sandor.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
I see that, once one has a lot of plates that you've already used in a GANS bath, one process, it seems, is that one cleans them the best way that they can. Even some people, I guess, are using steel wool and whatnot to clean off all the old nano layers, and then going back in to the hot caustic method from the beginning.
If you have, yes, if you have thick copper pieces like a plate or something with a uniform smooth surface, in that case you can use also to repurpose them to remove everything down to the shiny metal, which is requiring certain efforts. Instead of such a steel wool, you can use a metal scraper, like you see those who are working on vessels on the ocean. They're using such scrapers to remove the rust before to repaint the surface. So it's, scraping can give a nice shiny surface if the material is enough good for that. If you use just a bunch of wires, of course we will not do that. Always you can judge based on how much time and costs you have to put into renewing a used piece of copper, and you can compare that to acquiring a new piece of copper, and you decide which is worse for you. Yeah, if you have time to do it and you are savvy, you have plenty of time. Of course, you can scrub the surface of use the plate and to make it shiny again and to start from the beginning the whole process. It's possible. Or some people may say it costs too much for his time and work, and they use materials and water, and he can prefer to get, if he can get cheaply, another piece of metal. You always have options. You never throw out the used copper wires or plates, so always they have value as a scrap metal. You recycle everything by all means. You have a lot of choices of how to do it.
So, Sandor, in jewelry making, we have a compound called pickling. I think it's a sulfuric acid. And with silver and copper.
Oh, no. It's a hydrochloric acid mixed with salt usually, at least for copper. I don't know what they use for pickling, for instance, other metals, other alloys, right?
So, okay, then with copper, so I've heated my copper, put it in that hydrochloric acid, that pickling compound, and it comes out very clean. Then washing it, I have a clean copper plate. Is that copper plate usable?
Yes, but not forget that what you have treated with acid, it will have a quite different surface than something which is treated with caustic. It makes, acid makes quite different changes. So I did that too. I try to recycle some used copper plates by pickling them in acid. And what I found that they didn't got they didn't produce the results I expected. Maybe I did something wrong, it's possible. But in one of the cases, I had such a very nicely pickled piece of copper, and in a couple of days it became such a beautiful green color, like the walls on my wallpaper. And I had the experience sometimes these copper plates which I renewed by pickling lost the new nano coating very fast. So it's a subject to experiment. You have the methods, you have other ideas, so please try, experiment, and share your results. So that's how we cooperate in various social media groups, forums, or Facebook, and we create by our mutual exchange of our results of our experiments the greatest research laboratory on the planet. So maybe you can develop something new. If you have an experience and you have a result as you expected, or if you have the result as you didn't expect, both results are very valuable, because we know to repeat what was successful and to never repeat what was not successful.
Sando, in jewelry, sometimes they clean different metals with electrolysis. You
yes,
use
electrical etching.
Yeah.
Yes, electric etching also, it's another way of cleaning. So you'll find in technologies many ways how to do that. Not just in jewelry, for instance, in vacuum technology. You see specifications given by engineer. It should be a stainless steel of so-and-so grade, which should be electrically etched. Which electrical etches removes all the sharp points, so it prevents some kind of spark discharges when they apply such a high frequency generators in order to create that plasma sparking inside, etc., etc., etc.
Got a question in live stream here. It says, can we reuse the same nanoplates infinitely for the same production of GANs?
Not infinitely. Everything has a limitation in time. Can I use my teeth infinitely?
And then the other part of the question is, do we have to, or must we clean them before reuse?
So if you use some plates for making GANs of CO2, you will keep using for making GANs of CO2, and you will not change it to make another kind of GANs with it. And after the hot caustic nano coating, of course, you have to clean it, to wash it, to remove all the traces of the caustic. So use your own sane judgment. So what happened with that plate? How it looks like? Was in touch with such and such substance. So what you expect as a specification for a plate which you use in a different process? Is it helpful to have leftovers from the previous process? Just think about it. You have a pot in your kitchen. You use, for instance, for making soup. So if you made a kind of soup and you make a same kind but in the same pot, don't you wash it before? Just use common sense logic. You all know the answers. If you know how to put the question with all the parameters, in that case, often the answer pops up without voicing your question.
Sando, if we want to make the purest CO2 gas, the best thing would be to put the zinc plate in a plastic bag or outside of the container. Is this true?
So if you can manage to produce a CO2 gas without the metal plates to touch the water, so probably nothing of those plates will dissolve into the water. So you will have a more pure result. So now the method how you do that, whether you put it on external walls of a thin plastic container or whether you immerse them into a plastic bag, it's your choice.
There's also
Not all plastic bags are the same.
Yeah, the beeswax also somebody used.
I think I was one who hinted that when some people shared on the Facebook that somebody had the idea to use a waterproofing silicone spray to put it over the plate in order to preserve the plate and to avoid dissolving it. And I said, if you do that, so why don't you use a natural material like wax, which you can heat the plate and to put a little drop, and that will create a very thin covering, but you have to know that that will act also as a filter to the fields.
I've heard of
with your question, we enter in the field of
beeswax.
experimentation and development, and not to the basics. We are not anymore talking about the basics. Sorry, Rick.
Sorry, Chandra. I was just going to mention that beeswax I've heard used as well. That might be a relatively natural way. I've heard that they've had good results. I think it might have been Tom Salas actually that mentioned that. Anyway, go ahead.
Yes, possible. So I hope I did the answer. I told the answer.
Okay.
One more question, Flint?
Yeah, I have another question from Tamia here. For amino acids to be formed in GANS production, is it depending on the quality of the nano layers on the metals?
No, it depends of the conditions created by the created GANS materials. When you have the GANS in those conditions, it's already the GANS which changes the conditions in order to attract the amino acids. They are not the plates which are attracting the amino acid. It's a changed condition where you have the fields of the created GANS already changing the play. So it's a condition where the salt water, the fields of the plates, and the fields of the GANS are contributing to a new condition, which attracts nitrogen from air and ultimately produces that layer of amino acids on the top. If you keep extracting always the daily produced GANs, you will observe that you will have no amino acids. If you leave the GANs inside, amino acids will appear. If your purpose is to harvest amino acids, in that case, you don't remove the GANs. And your GANs capturing kit will not capture any more that GANs, but will become amino acid capturing kit after a while.
Okay.
Is this because of the lack of oxygen in the water or what?
No, it's because of the fields of the GANs, which add themselves to the conditions which are inside your GANs kit. You create a magnet of for the plasmas of the nitrogen. You create magnetic fields which will pull in the nitrogen from the air. Look, CO2, carbon is 12, oxygen is 16, 2 times 16 is 32, 32 plus 12 from the carbon, it's 44. And if you look at the amino acid, you have a hydrogen, you have a nitrogen, you have a carbon, you have an oxygen. What is its strength? If you add them together, it's 43. Isn't that similar to the fields or near equal to the 43? Isn't it near equal to 44?
Okay, is there Dimitri, you there?
Yeah, thank you. It was just a question about the nano coating. When the plasmatic method is used, whether it be a maglev unit or a plasmatic power unit, because there is a flow of plasma creating the nano coating, the direction is already set, yes?
Can you repeat that, please?
When you use a plasma power unit, a generator,
Yes.
or a maglev unit to create the nano coating on plates, is the direction already set because of the flow of plasma?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. If I may start my video, back to amino acids. I have been, can you stop the share, please, for a second? Thank you. So I have been out of our apartment for 2 weeks, and I left this CO2 kit here. It had water, and I had to replenish the water. And you see, if I didn't harvest the CO2 gas from the bottom for so long, it collected a lot of amino acids. So it is the presence of the gas which contributes to pulling the nitrogen from the air.
Isn't there a mixture of salt there?
Yes, it's salty water. It's a 3.5% salt solution, and you see some part of salt already creeped out of the container. So if I would have kept every day harvesting and harvesting again, I would never have this amino acid on the top. So if your purpose is to harvest amino acids, you just keep the GANs inside. And after a while the production of the GANs will stop because you change the conditions by the presence of the GANs, and it will start pulling amino acids. You see plenty of amino acids. So you see, you can use a scoop or a spoon and harvest plenty of amino acid from such a GANs kit. Let me move it without spilling on the keyboard.
Right. Thank you very much, Sandor. And thank you for wonderful input over the couple of weeks. I think we've all learned a hell of a lot from your knowledge on the different GANs and nano layering. So thank you very much.
Always welcome.
Okay, so we're going to do the last of the GANSes, of the four main GANSes, and that's the copper GANs, and it is the easier of all of them. Okay, so here's a wonderful image that Sandor sent through to me. So here's a good way to start off with what your copper oxide GANs is going to look like, the color. Nice blue, green, turquoise color. So in this method, what we're needing is we just have a plain copper plate. We have our nano-coated copper plate, your plastic box, copper wire, distilled water, water and your sea salt. So it's similar as all the others, just we're having 2 copper plates, 1 nano and 1 plain. So you set up the same process as every other method with your distilled water, salt solution, and your 2 plates, and you connect your 2 plates up with a wire. And that's the simple setup for the copper GANs.
So optionally, you can put an LED between the 2 plates here too. It's not always necessary, but it slightly adjusts the currents limits to very small values.
Yeah, we find that when we've done one with an LED and one without, you can tell the difference between the two. The one with an LED, because it's much slower, it's a very softer, fluffier copper GAN. So we begin to understand that there will be different uses for these GANs when we get to
yes, so you can create a whole spectrum of different strength copper GANs by regulating the current which circulates between those 2 plates, or by adjusting the distance between the plates, or by adjusting the salinity. I saw somebody did such an experiment by using different salt concentrations from 1%, 5%, 10%, and he compared the results. So when you have less salt and when you have smaller currents, always you will get a slow production, but you will have a fluffier, lighter structure as a result. When you have higher currents, you will have maybe a higher speed of production, and you will have the smaller particles, heavier particles, which are more compact. So you can experiment in various ways and to compare the results. So it's fine, you can leave that way. It works in that way too. Some people will think to boost it with some external power source, but in that case also you have to take care to use a current limitation to small values of milliamps. Otherwise, if you increase the currents, you will get a different kind of nanocopper. So from the pure metallic nanocopper to black copper oxide or red copper oxide and so on. It depends of how much time it has the dissolved copper to combine with the oxygen. If the process is fast, the copper will not grab too much oxygen to it. If the process is slower, it can grab a little more oxygen.
I think in all of our GANs production, no matter which GANs we choose to make, it's patience is the secret, and to rather do it as slow as possible. I know we all have quite impatient and we like to get things done fast, but in this case, the slower the better.
It's same like with gardening, or when you are growing chicken. There are chicken breed which grow really fast, and there are those who are growing slower, which makes a tastier soup. Sorry for vegetarians when I'm talking about eating meat.
And then you extract your copper GANs in exactly the same way as all the other GANSs. You do it with a syringe. Some people have other methods. So it just depends on how you want to do it, but you can just extract your GANs that you're needing. And obviously, if you've got a whole lot of the amino acids, like what Sandor has shown, you take your amino acids off the surface first. And then what Lisa does when you've taken a lot of the amino acids off, and what we do is the little bits of amino acid that's left, and we still have some GANs on the bottom that we haven't taken up. What we do is we sort of mix it through so that we are interacting the GANs with the amino acids, and then we let that settle, and then we can collect that separately so that we know that's a CO2 amino acid mix. So you can do different things as long as you just label what you've done and you label what your jar is, so then it'll have certain applications. And again, importantly, the washing of your GANs, because they still have a high concentration of salt. So you just wash at least 10, 15, 16 times with your distilled water to ensure that you've got a lot of your salt that's washed out of your GANs before you're using it. And then you collect your amino acids, because these amino acids now will have the copper connection, so they will then have their specific uses, particularly in the health applications. And then your different colors of your copper GANs. Now, when people generally put a lot of high power through your plates, in the beginning, that's when you start getting your red or pink color, or your black or brown colors, because, as Sando explained, your copper, because it's so fast, it hasn't had time to attach with the oxygen, so you get your red, pink, or your black or brown. The one or two times when we have created the black color copper oxide, then what we've done is we've just put bubbled some air through that water, and over time it'll turn to the blue-green turquoise color copper oxide, because then it's giving you time to attach another oxygen to that GANs. But then we do find that that one is then slightly different because of the process it's gone through. So that will have a different, say, probably more heavier than if you'd done it slower in the first time round. So everything you do changes the condition and will give you a different result. So again, when you are doing all of your GANSs, keep a notebook, record everything that you are doing so that you can repeat it at a later stage. Or if you get a different result, have a look and compare it to previous times with your notes, and then you'll be able to see what maybe you've done something slightly different and it's changed everything. So please be very particular and record what you're doing.
Are you saying that in using an LED, it's a slower process of GANs production?
Yes, because you are restricting the flow of the current, just like the CO2.
And don't forget, you have no enough voltage from a copper oxide kit to open the LED. Use it in a closed junction condition. When it behaves like a resistor of very high values, such as 50 mega ohms, for instance, or in that range. So you have only nanoamperes or microamperes which goes through.
So we've done the 4 main GANSs. There are many other GANSs that one can make, but these are the 4 basic ones that we've created. And each one of them is going to have different applications, or combinations of them will have different applications. In health, when you look at each element matches field strengths in the body. So when we're looking at our GANSs, your carbon is the connector and communicator for your body. Oxygen behaves as the gravitator, and hydrogen is the energy for our body. So when we're looking at specifically CO2 GANs, we have the carbon, which gives us the connection to our body, and the oxygen, so it can gravitate. It connects the body and emotion and balances for health and for pain. So it has a general health use. And I see Dr. Rodrigo is with us today, so you're welcome to join in, Rodrigo, to add more into the information here. It's used for viruses, cancers, and can add energy where required. And it can be used in patches, drinking, health devices, and it's the most important one for the health. And we also use it extensively in agricultural applications as well. So it's not just your health. Copper oxide, your lymph system connection. As your lymph is in charge of your body processes, it interacts with the muscle. It has a connection with your muscles, being with the copper. Your nervous system, it's used very much as disinfection of your, either on yourself or when you want to disinfect water. There's excellent properties there. And a lot of it is used in energy when you're making your maggrav units as well. CH3, you have your carbon, your connection with the body, and hydrogen, which is the energy. Now, because you've made the CH3 with your zinc plate, with the iron, we have the connection to our blood. And as the blood is the carrier of our emotion, we get the connection there with the CH3. And it is also the basic sugars of our body, being the CH3 component. And say the hydrogen is the one that gives us the energy. It's used in healing, feeding, certain formulas with the liquid plasma waters that one uses for different health applications. And is also used in agriculture because it's the energy, again, the hydrogens, which is used. Your zinc oxide is connected to our emotion and should also be used in all health applications. As we begin to understand that emotion controls the body and controls the diseases, is the cause of a lot of our diseases in our body. So the best is to work on the emotion side of your body. And we also use the zinc in agriculture. So there's just the 4 basic answers, some very basic uses of it. Next year we'll go into different ganses and different applications, but if you can just focus on making these 4 basic ganses, there are a myriad of uses that one can use, different combinations, and they'll have enormous benefits. Even if you just make the ganses and have them in your room, in your house, in bottles, they are changing that environment. So giving you certainly healthy living environment. So we do recommend that everybody please at least make your basic ganses. Go through the process, understand, and make your ganses. Any questions?
I have a question, Jim. Is it recommended more so just to drink the 4 main ganses separately on their own, or to mix them?
I've understood to drink them separately. I think Rodrigo, are you there to add or not? But what I've understood is to drink them separately, particularly if you're looking at different recipes for diabetes or for certain other illnesses. There is a method and process of drinking and in which order one must drink. So it will have a different effect than if we combine them all and drank them all at once, which is not what we want you to do. So there are separate different formulas for drinking the liquid plasma water of your different ganses.
Okay, thank you. I've actually got one more question. I had 3 CO2 boxes. All 3 of them were linked with green LEDs. 2 of them had plates that were caustic coated, and 1 of them had a plate that was fire coated. All 3 of my CO2 units produced a GANS that looks like CuO2 and not CO2. Is it at the time when these when I built these production units and put it in, emotionally I was all over the place because I had invited a friend here with bipolar, and I ended up sucking up all his energy and his personality imprinted on me, and it took me months to get over it. Is it my emotions that made the GANs produced turquoise green and look like copper? Or is it the environment, not including me, that produced the turquoise green? It does not look like any CO2. It's copper. It looks like copper. It's a beautiful turquoise green. I just wanted to know why all three of the CO2 units produced exactly the same GANs. There was no variation between them. All three of them produced exactly the same. Could you enlighten me on that?
I can't answer you on that one. You will know yourself, depending, as we've always said, your emotion at the time, your intention when you make them does have an impact. But also look at the setup that you have on your ganses, your boxes there, because generally if you start getting copper, it means that your nano-coated copper plate might not have been done correctly. So you are getting copper coming through, or your connection there with or without an LED. So there's a lot of factors there, Dimitri.
Okay, thank you. Just finally, it's recommended that I keep my drinking of the CuO2 GANs water to a minimum. Is that right?
Yeah, copper is something that has specific uses. So it's not a sort of recommended to use as a general health tonic because it has that certain field strength. And so it's not recommended to drink the copper. It's can be part of different formulas when you're wanting specific uses out of it, benefits out of it, but I don't think as a general tonic.
Good day, Jim.
Yes.
Good day, everybody. Jalal here. I have a question for Dimitri. What is your plus and minus connection?
The black wire from the LED went to the zinc plate, and the red wire went to the nano-coated copper plate. I'm just going to run next door and just double check, because I've got the plates are all still connected, just in a dry box. Just give me 1 second and let me go and have a look.
Yes.
Any other questions, Flint, while we're waiting?
Yep, there's a lot of them. Well, several. Okay. Just getting the right window pulled up here. What is the difference? This is from Tammy Off of Livestream. What is the difference between CuO and CuO2, like in health patches?
Okay, yeah. It was the black lead went to the plain zinc plate, and the red lead went to the nano-coated copper plate on all three of those boxes.
So you, the nano-coated, get the plus. Yes?
Yes, the red lead.
Okay. If I can suggest, you change them, because the dictator is the nano-coated plate. So you don't need the plus there. The plus always go to the other part of the plate.
Okay, thank you.
You're most welcome.
Coming back to that question, Flint, I don't know. I can't answer the question.
Actually, I think you already answered it. It was in the chart that you put up with the CuO and the CuO2 and the Cu2O and so on.
Yes, there is a difference, but from a medical perspective, and maybe each one will have different applications. I don't know. I think that was the question more.
Yeah, I was going to say too that people often interchange the CuO2 and the CuO in talking about the turquoise type GANs that's created. Most often we just say it's copper oxide GANs or CuO, sometimes CuO2. It's kind of there's a few different terms used there, so people shouldn't take it actually literally as meaning that particular chemical element, because it may not have that actual chemical chemistry to it. It could be other things added or subtracted or whatever. But basically it's called copper oxide or called CuO or sometimes CuO2, sometimes Cu2O. It gets a bit confusing that way, but if you understand that it's more of a, you're looking for a range of color rather than a particular name that we attach to these things.
Yeah, and if you do it slowly without forcing anything with current, then you know that you know what you're producing. The minute we trying to force things with current, then that's when we start getting different materials, and then we don't know what we have created.
Yes, I've tried to answer so many questions from people that have applied, 12 volts and 3 amps, and I've gotten this ugly mass of 3 or 8 different colors of materials, and what nanomaterials have I created? And you can't answer because it's a mishmash of, there might be some nanomaterials, you've got other chemical compounds, you've got elements, you've got all kinds of stuff in a mishmash, and that's why it's recommended in for example, the workshop series that we do with the Keshe Foundation hands-on workshops, where it's becoming more and more standardized. So we have, when you do a certain certain physical motions, then you get certain results under most conditions, at least. There's quite a variety of conditions around the planet, so it makes it for some variation there, but the idea is to try to standardize as much as possible with some basic techniques, and that's what you've outlined here with the basics of the Ganses. And like you've mentioned too, there's lots of room for variation. There's many infinite number of ways to change things. And that's part of the beauty of the technology, is there's some student in university somewhere that can just take it way out to the outer limits of just one aspect of this nanotechnology and GANs creation, area. It's pretty easy to expand it into the finer details of that technology, but we're just hinting at the range of possibilities.
Yeah, that's why I've specifically stayed away from bringing any battery or power supply into the making of the Ganses, because I know what we like. We want to just we think, oh well, if we can just crank up the power, then we can make it faster. We don't have the patience. So I specifically not brought in any batteries, because if we do it the slow way, then we know what it should be, what we can produce. If at a later stage we can have the instrumentation to start measuring what we have produced, then by all means play around with different currents and different that, because then we're able to measure it, send it to a lab and find out what we've created. But because most of us don't have those facilities, if we do it the slow method, then we know what we're creating. So
Gato wrote in chat here, CuO is black, CuO2 is green, and Cu2O is red-brown.
That's exactly what was in the chart that was shown earlier. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they generally get those colors when you put too much, when you put power, you add a battery, And then when you get those colors, because it's just too fast.
So the GANs, the question here, so the GANs designations are from the periodic table of elements?
I don't understand the question. Just this copper or?
Yeah, he was asking, Stefan was asking in live stream there. Or I guess wanting to confirm we're designating the GANs as with the periodic table of elements designations. Like CO2, CuO, that kind of thing.
Well, CO2 has been measured and tested to be confirmed as CO2. And the same as, the zinc, because you're doing it with 2 zinc plates, you know what you're creating. With the copper, you've got 2 copper plates, so you've set the condition to create copper. CH3 has been tested and know what it is. So, these are what we know that, and what we can produce. The minute we deviate from these conditions and you're creating something else, you don't know what you're creating. You have to have it analyzed and tested. Because every condition, everything you change in that box changes the condition, and you might be creating something else.
Question about the LED or just the wire connection. In making the CO2, using just a wire or using the LED creates a dramatic difference in what you get. And if I understand right,
Very
with
much
the wire connection, you get mainly a zinc, and with the LED, you get more CO2. Is that the case with the other Ganses as well? Such a dramatic difference?
What depends? Have a look at what condition you're creating in your box, Nicholas. If you've got copper and copper, you are setting that condition to create. When we set up the condition for the CO2, we're setting up the condition to create. We're wanting to attract that carbon coming in to create the CO2. Now, each set of plates, every condition we're setting there, we know what we're wanting to create. It's not a random. We've set the plates to create the different maggrav fields so that we are creating what we want to create. If you put totally different plates in there, what happens if we put a titanium plate or magnesium with something else? We're going to be creating something different because we're creating a different magnetic gravitational field strength in our box.
I understand that. My question, I guess, was when you use an LED in a CO2 box, copper and zinc, you get mainly a CO2 GANs. And you test that and you share with us that that's what we're getting. And without the LED, we're getting mainly a zinc oxide. I assume that's correct. My question I can see then with the copper and the zinc, but how about the CH3? Is the LED, when tested, creating a significantly different GANs when using an LED or not? But when you test it, because we can't test it.
No. You're correct with your assumption on the zinc and with an LED and when you're making CO2 with or without the LED, yes. When you're looking at the copper, if you do just connect your wires, you will get a certain copper GANs. If you connect with wires with an LED, then you're going to get you'll get copper GANs, but it's going to have a sort of slightly fluffier GANs. You can see the difference between the two. They are copper GANs, both of them but one might have different field strength than the other one. bear in mind now, you know, when you're starting to look at the different subtleties, you're looking at different field strengths.
Just look at the different isotopes of copper. I think there's a
Yeah.
couple of dozen isotopes of copper alone, which is probably what we're dealing with in some of these subtleties like that.
Yeah. And you know, as we go down the line in terms of the health, then we might find that the one has a certain application in our body, and the other one works better on certain other conditions. You know, so these are all how we're going to develop down the line, is by observing these little subtleties and playing with them and experimenting and seeing what effects they have.
And that's what makes it difficult to answer the question, which technique is better? Because it's all determinant on the exact conditions where you're in and the effects you're after, your intention, and a whole raft of things. And it's so hard to say the best technique. Like, for example, for Tom Salas in Dominica, under adverse conditions, then the best that definition of best technique is different than someone working in a lab in Europe somewhere, in a sophisticated lab. It's totally different conditions.
You know, even as far as when you're making your CO2 gains in summer and you make your CO2 gains in winter. Yes, you're making, to you it looks like CO2, but the summer CO2 will have a different field strength to the winter CO2 gains, because the condition when you created it is different. One is summer, one is winter, autumn, spring. So every time you're creating a CO2 gas, the conditions are different.
For example, it's a full moon right now, and that might change the conditions. There's a very good chance that that does alter the conditions for these kinds of experiments. We haven't really looked at that too much, but that's for people, for example, that create this Ormus thing, to do it actually properly, it's supposed to be done only in a full moon at midnight. So go figure. There's probably some scientific basis for that if you're to look into it. In fact, I know there is. But we haven't really applied that too much to the GANs making. It might be a minimal effect in the GANs making. I'm not sure about that.
What we've done, and which is proven very, very effective, is every time we make, for example, CO2, then we have what we call our mother pot. So from the very first time we made CO2, we've put that into the pot. And every subsequent time we're making CO2, we are putting that CO2 into our mother pot. So we are putting some of that into our mother pot. So over time, 2 or 3 years down the line, you've created a CO2 which, because you've done it at so many different conditions, so many different times of the year, you've created a CO2 which has a really wide field strength. And so its effectiveness on health applications and different applications will be very, very good. Whereas if you just created a single CO2. So it is recommended to try and do that way as well, because you're building up a nice pot of different soup of different field strengths of CO2.
Okay. Are you saying you mix the GANSes, or you use the same GANS pot for the bath?
When you're making your CO2, what we're doing is, once we've washed the CO2 and we want to store it, we have one, we call it our mother pot. Okay, so we'll take some of the GANs we've made today, and we'll take some of that and add it to all our CO2. So we're only mixing CO2 with CO2. And we mix that together in one pot. So every time we're making a new batch of CO2, we're putting some of that new, a little bit of that new one into our existing pot, so that we're building up a pot with a huge variety of different strengths of CO2. Does that make sense?
That's beautiful.
Okay, got some more questions lined up here. How do I use and or apply amino acids together with plasma water?
I think we'll carry that question over for Dr. Rodrigo for next week, because that has
Okay.
mainly health applications.
Okay.
Well, I don't want to go there.
Okay, another question is, can you expand more about the characteristics of the GANs? Why is one the connector, another the feeder, the gravitational, and so on?
Carbon is the connector. When you have a look at your chemical composition of your body, I think it's 60 odd % is carbon. So as two magnets attract, so your carbon will connect with the carbon in the body. Okay, so that's why we call carbon as the connector. When you're looking at the oxygen, we call it the gravitator, because when you have a look at the way the plasmas form, is the heavier element is in the middle. So that oxygen is 16. The next lighter one would be nitrogen, which would be 14. And then you got your carbon 12 and hydrogen 1. Okay, so the oxygen acts as the gravitator because just like in the matter world, iron acts as the magnet, creates the magnetism. So oxygen plays that role in the GAN state. So that's why two amino acids will be connected to each other, because the oxygen plays the role in our body or in any GANs as that magnet. So that's why we call it the gravitator. Then hydrogen is energy. Hydrogen gives us the energy. You know, when we eat a lot of chocolates or we drink a lot of Coke or whatever, it's just essentially sugars. And then our body, it's hydrogen for our body. Our body takes it as hydrogen. That's your energy.
Thank you. I'll see if there's any response to that here in chat. In the meantime, yeah, Doug McDonald, you got a question here, don't you? You can feel free to unmute and talk if you want.
Thanks, Flint.
Yeah.
Just if we acquire pre-made GANs bought from the cash store, and does the amino acids that we're talking about, or do the amino acids get created within our body when we drink the water?
The water from the pre-made dried GANs you're talking about?
If we buy GANs material in liquid state or dry state, and
the thing is, you're not supposed to make GANs water and drink it from the dried GANs material. This is very important because it cannot be mixed properly with the water. The dried GANs is for use on the coils of the MagRav units.
Liquid GANs, not dried GANs.
Okay. So you're saying, can the liquid GANs be? Can it make amino acids like?
Yes. If we drink the liquid, the plasma water from the liquid GANs, does our body not make the amino acids or add the amino acids inside our own body?
Well, the amino acids don't normally form on the plasma water. It forms on the in the GANs making kit in the heavy salt condition and plates, not from the plasma water, which is the mostly distilled water that is taken off the top of the settled out, already cleaned many times by distilled water ganses and so on. So I don't know. Is there any other input on that? Do you think amino acids could be created from the actual plasma water? Is that possible?
No, I think your body's creating the amino acids all the time. By drinking the liquid plasma water of the CO2, you are drinking, because the water is your carrier of the fields, so it's giving the fields to your body in that sense. So your body is naturally creating amino acids all the time. So we're not going to
So
create additional.
would it help or facilitate that process, perhaps? Like
It helps the body on all levels. So because it connects with our amino acid structure, as Sandor explained. 44 is CO2 and 43 is your basic amino acid structure. So you get that connection there.
Thank you, Jim. That answers my question. Thank you.
Okay.
I don't see any others, unless someone else in Zoom here has some.
All right. Now, to close off this week's workshop, we produced a video many months ago. It was Caroline had explained a nice little exercise that we can all do to experience the ganses and experience and connect with the world around us. And so it was with Danny Moe in the subscriber team and a few of us with Flint and everybody. We had created this little video explaining how one can use the 3 ganses and go and try and connect with the energy around us, energy with nature. So we can play the video, Flint, if you like.
It's called Playing with Plasma Energy. This energy exercise is brought to you by Caroline and the Keshe Foundation education team. It is called Playing with Plasma Energy, and it explains how to get in touch with everything around us. It is an exercise to absorb the plasmatic fields. It is also an exercise to balance yourself and your own fields. And it is an exercise to connect to others around you, whether it be humans, animals, or plants. An easy and fun way to try this out for yourself is to fill 3 spray bottles with liquid plasma, also containing a little of the GANs to keep it energized for longer. GANs bottles feel cold to the touch when activated. 1 bottle would contain CH3 liquid plasma plus a little of its GANs. The second bottle containing CO2 and a little of its GANs. And the third spray bottle contains zinc oxide, also with a little of its own GANs in it. You could, for example, start your day by using them on your hands, and in this way create a connection with the universal fields. Just shake the bottles and spray a small amount of all three onto the palm of your right hand. The one to start with would be CH3, followed by CO2, and then spray on the zinc oxide. The CH3 will be the energy link between yourself and all other fields. The CO2 is the communication link, and the zinc oxide is your emotional link. Now hold your hands together gently and allow them to dry slowly. Ease your mind, let go of the thinking, and enjoy the process of playing with the plasma energies. It is not necessary to rub your hands, so only spray on very little. During the process, your hands might get very warm, and once the hands have dried, step outside if you can, and allow the fields which bathe our planet to be absorbed by you. You are now feeding yourself from the fields, which are always at work, and the balance will bring peace. Try to connect to all the other plasmas around you, and all of creation if you wish, to receive everything from the universe to balance your energy. Notice any sensations or changes you might feel, and share the connection and joy with everything around you.
Thank you, Flint.
Yes, you're welcome.
And that's it for today. So thank you very much.
Where is that video available?
We will make it available in the next couple of days.
Thank you. It was very well done.
Thank you for the clarity in the presentation tonight.
Our pleasure.
Jim, do you have 2 or 3 minutes more?
Depends on the question.
If you bring up again the picture of the human being, the last one was, and if you see the structure of the plasma, it is
in video.
No, it is I think it's a picture before the ganses.
What's the question then?
It's not a question that the knowledge seekers visualize one cell, visualize one body, visualize one solar system, one galaxy, one universe, one unicos. This is very beautiful picture you have there. And if they just can see it, and then they will understand the real meaning and the understanding of plasma. One atom, like one body, like one earth, like one, everyone is one. More deeper you goes, more you find a universe. It's the same like the spiral.
Just got to try and go back.
I think it was the last picture before the ganses.
It was slide 22.
Oh. This one?
Is that the one you were talking about, Jalal?
Sorry, I think not this one, the other one. It's only in the picture only a head of a human being.
I don't know which one you.
I'm sorry, Jim.
Yeah, I'm looking through it too. I don't see the slide like that. This presentation.
Oh.
I'm not
Maybe that
imagining
one.
that. I am not imagining that.
Maybe in your reality.
Could be. But it was really a beautiful one, really. And if I am in the teaching team, I will leave it always like this and explain in the plasma because it makes real beautiful sense.
No, don't know what picture.
Yeah, it's always happened like this because I wanted to go out. It will not come. No problem. I will find it to you next week. I will show it.
Okay. Why didn't send it to me?
Thank you. Tim.
Yeah, you could take a screenshot, Jalal, and bring it up next time.
Yes, of course.
Okay. This one.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. If you see the difference between the plasmas, small one, big one, joined one, far away, it's all one. Beautiful plasma. And you see if the shape, everyone is a universe.
I knew there was a reason why I liked this picture. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good there, Jalal.
Thank you.
Jalal, you brought us a birthday present. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm waiting for my present, my God.
You decide. That's your present. You brought it to us, and now we're sharing it back to you. Happy birthday.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Flint. Thank you, Rick. And thank you, Sandor.
Thank you, Jim. Great presentation today.
Yes, it was wonderful again.
Thank you very much for all your presence.
Okay, yes, thank you everyone for attending also. This is the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute Public Teaching in English for Monday, December 4th, 2017. Part 11 of Understanding Plasma Science. We'll see you next week at the same time for Part 12, 10 a.m. Central European Time. Thank you all again, and we'll see you soon. Bye for now.